Fellow auto detailers, welcome to the show that features interviews with today's most successful auto detailers. This is the Auto Detailing Podcast. Here's your host, Jimbo Balaam.
Hey, before we get into today's episode, I want to talk to you about the Detailer Inner Circle and the giveaway contest that we have going on. Now, the giveaway, or the Detailer Inner Circle rather, is really my heart and soul wrapped up into a course. I'm passionate about building profitable detailing businesses and helping guys achieve that through unconventional sales and marketing tactics that really no one else is sharing and no one else even has to offer. So you can find out more at detailer-innercircle.com. But if you're even remotely interested in it, you can sign up for our giveaway where we are giving away 12 months free to the Detailer Inner Circle. You get a free website in the Detailer Inner Circle and a ton of marketing material. And with the websites that we give away, this is super exciting for me. Guys are generating leads instantly with the free website that we give them, so it's more than paying for it themselves. It's more than paying for the cost of entry to the Detailer Inner Circle just from the leads that they're generating from the websites that we give them for free. But if you want a chance to win the Detailer Inner Circle free for a year, now this is open to people that are in the Inner Circle and not in the Inner Circle. No purchase necessary. You don't have a better chance of winning if you're already in the Inner Circle or any of that. Just if you want to be entered to win 12 free months of the Detailer Inner Circle, this is how you can do it. You go to wearedetailers.com. That's wearedetailers.com. Enter your information, and we're going to pick one lucky winner. If you want to see what the Detailer Inner Circle is all about, of course, detailer-innercircle.com. But if you're interested in winning the giveaway and entering the giveaway, it's wearedetailers.com. Welcome to episode 207 of the Auto Detailing Podcast. I'm Jimbo, your host, coming to you not live. Why do I always want to say coming to you live? I'm coming to you from the mobile recording studio, aka the front seat of my truck. Anyway, I want to talk to you today about, and by the way, a lull in guests because I've been so focused on lining up interviews for SEMA coming up this week. In fact, I'll be flying out 2 days after this episode is released to SEMA, where I have at least 10 interviews lined up. So that'll bring us through the beginning of the year. Some really, really exciting interviews. Anyway, I want to talk to you today about what happens when you crash a customer's car, or what happens when you maybe don't crash it, but the garage door comes down on it. You pull it back in the garage, you think you're doing a favor for the customer, and you didn't pull the car up far enough. What happens when you maybe don't crash the car, but you ruin the car, you burn the paint, you scratch the car in an accident, a ladder falls on it, your buffer falls on it, you dent it. All those issues that can arise while you are detailing a car. So I want to talk about, at least just from my experience, because fortunately for you and unfortunately for me, I've been in those positions 3 or 4 times throughout my career, because at the end of the day, things are gonna happen. Shit happens, as people say, and unfortunately things just are out of your control and just happen. So really what it's about is how do you handle those situations when they do arise? What do you do when you burn the customer's paint when you're polishing it? What do you do when you burn the customer's paint and that car is getting ready for a photo shoot the following day and it just came from a custom painter by the name of Jesse James? What do you do that? What do you do? That situation happened to me, and as I record this episode, not more and more, I am perfect. Nothing ever happens. Just kidding. Stuff happens. So I hope in this episode I'm going to walk you through a few of the things that have happened to me and a few of the situations that I found myself in, like burning the paint on a car that had just been painted by Jesse James that was scheduled for a photo shoot the following day. How do you, because, and here's the lesson that I've learned through all these different things, is that the situation sucks when you damage a customer's car. how you handled the situation is more important than what happens when you run over a laptop because the customer set their purse behind the wheel and you didn't see it. So how you handle the situation will completely dictate the final outcome of that situation and the reaction of the customer. Because I could tell you, out of my experience and all these mishaps that have happened along the way, not one time has a customer retaliated in a negative way against me. They've all been cordial about it. They've all, we've been able to work together towards a common goal. And the customers that I lost from accidents happening were not because the customer stopped calling me. It was because I was honestly just pretty embarrassed about ever going back. And that's kind of what I want to help you with too, is that you can damage a customer's car and still have them as a customer. So let's talk about one of the earliest mistakes that happened to me early on, and that was I was doing a customer's RS4. It was a brand new car, metallic black, stick shift, and I was very, very inexperienced as a detailer, and very extreme, even more inexperienced as a driver of a car. And so I was kind of nervous because I, had just finished cleaning this fancy car to me at that time. I had just been detailing under 6 months. It was a client's car that I got it was a referral from a family friend. Very, very, very wealthy guy. And so, all these factors kind of go into it that make you really nervous when you're talking about doing a car and being in that moment. I'm insecure as a detailer. I'm insecure as a detailer, inexperienced as a car driver, feeling inadequate because I'm doing high-end cars, working for high net worth people, and at the time didn't have much experience with that. So all these factors are are at play, right? So I'm on a hill, basically moving the car from one side of the street to the other on this extremely steep hill that is very high in traffic. Again, another factor to go into it, that I'm on this busy street, right? So I'm trying to get this done quick. As I go, what I should have done is gone to the end of the street, made a U-turn, and came back around. But being inexperienced with a stick shift at the time, I didn't think I could make it up the hill back around. So I tried to just turn it right there in the middle of the street. And so as I got halfway, into my U-turn, I had to now reverse back so I could make the complete turn. Well, anyone who is inexperienced in a stick shift, and even if you are experienced in a stick shift, sometimes finding reverse on the gearbox is confusing. Some are just up and left, some are down and left, some are down and right, some are down or up and to the right, some you lift up and then over to the left or right or down or whatever, some you push down. And so I didn't know, and the guy had modded this car out a little bit, so there was the cheat sheet that's normally on the top of the shifter wasn't there. So I had no reference. 2008, I have a BlackBerry in my pocket, not an iPhone. I'm in the middle of the street, super expensive car. I'm stuck, essentially. No one around. I'm just stuck in the middle of the street to try to figure this out. Well, as this is happening, I'm at the right enough angle to be inching towards the curb and also the neighbor's brick ledge right there. So as I'm trying to find reverse and guessing, because essentially you have, 4, 8, 12 different directions at least that reverse could be. And with every as I'm slanted down on the hill, I need to give it gas as I feather off the clutch. So every time I do that to see if I've actually found reverse, I'm inching closer and closer and closer and closer to that curb and brick. I think you could tell where the story is going. I end up butting up to the brick in the curb before someone came out and could find reverse for me and get the car back along the curb where it should have been parked. Anyway, so what do you do in this situation, right? There's a couple things you can do. You could ignore it, right, and hope that the customer doesn't see it. And then when he does, because he wasn't inspecting the cars after each wash, but you could ignore it, and then the car's parked on the street. You know, it could just be a mishap. Someone could have backed into them, and no fault of your own. Accidents happen, and people don't leave their name and number all the time. Or you could confront the customer and risk the account, right? So then you're risking the account and, the possibility that that customer is never going to use you again, which is fair. Or worst case scenario, you take the walk of shame. And that's what I decided to do, and just be honest and upfront with the customer. So I take a long walk up these steps to the customer's house because he lived on a little bit of a ridge, knock on the front door, and I don't even remember his name at this point anymore, but, Tim or John or whatever his name was, we have an issue. The issue being that I crashed your car. And, their first response is like, what are you talking about? You crashed my car. Because you're there to clean their car to make it look better, not there to make their car worse and add more headache to their day. So take that walk of shame, tell him I've crashed the car. He comes and inspects the damage, and I'm just letting you know how I handled it. So he comes down, he inspects the damage, and I say, look, I did 6 cars for you today. Now, this is not necessarily the right way to handle it. This is just how I handled it. So, you know what, look, I did 6 cars today. This was one of the 6. Not only are you not paying, because at this point, my mindset is I need to control this situation to get out here unscathed, right? And to make this customer as happy as possible when I've just created a ginormous headache for him. And that's what I did. So in that situation, I said, look, you're not going to pay for any of the cars today, and I'm going to pay for whatever damage I caused. So I not only make sure that they're taken care of for that day and they're happy, and luckily for this customer, that's, one of 6 cars that I did that day. So he has plenty of other cars to do. But I also reassure him that, look, we could run this through my insurance. Again, another great reason why to have insurance, because you could run it through your insurance if you want to, or not, depending on how much the damage is. In this case, I'm 6 months into my business, and I get hit with a $758 bill or $700 and something bill that I got to come up with, and that hurts for a little startup business. So, but you pay that bill too. I paid that bill too, and you keep going. So on the flip side of that, and again, if you want to hear the Jesse James story, or the car that Jesse James painted that was ready for a photo shoot, there's an extremely wealthy guy in my local neighborhood, in my local city, that has hundreds of cars, and I was starting to maintain these cars for him. Daily drivers and not daily drivers, obviously, just a great collection of cars. And he had one race car that was, it was a Dodge Viper that was anything but a Dodge Viper, and had been just completely gone through, and it was street legal, but had 1,500 horsepower. It was a race car. It was a total racetrack car, but in a Dodge Viper shell, essentially. And it was and this guy also does yearly calendars that he hands out to everyone just for fun, and each month is some of his cars. So he had this photo shoot for that, and it had been repainted by Jesse James, and while the hood was taken off the car to be repainted separately, obviously, as it got back to his shop, this gentleman's assistant, right-hand man, asked me if I could help him put the hood back on the car. Similar to putting a hardtop back onto a T-Bird or a Jeep Rubicon, or something along those lines where you really do need two people to get it on properly, and you're essentially setting it into place, and it has to be perfect. You got to get it right the first time, or else you're going to scratch the paint. Well, that's exactly what what happened was not my fault, but the guy helping me, or the guy that I was helping rather, he messed up on his side and scratched the front bumper of this car that had been freshly painted by Jesse James. And the oh crap moment that ensued after that was nothing short of amazing to watch. Anyway, he looks to me, because crap, perfect timing, detailer Jimbo, to be here. I just scratched the front of this car, and you're here to fix it. Make me look good. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm the detailer. I can do this. And again, most of these things that happened early on in my career, to where I was very inexperienced with handling situations like this, which is the exact point of this podcast, is to use my mistakes and experience to help you as maybe a new detailer, maybe a very experienced detailer as far as time you've been doing these, or maybe just for your enjoyment to get a laugh out of my mistakes. And if that's the case, I'm cool with that too. Anyway, so here we go. A nice size scratch on the very front of this freshly painted Dodge Viper. Again, not a cheap paint job, I'm assuming. And so, my job is to now take this scratch out. But here's where my inexperience comes into play, in the fact that I haven't really had that much experience in scratch removal. So, whereas if it were today, I can basically look at that scratch and tell you whether or not I could even fix it, whether or not I could take it out all the way, or whether or not I could even hide it a little bit for the purpose of this photo shoot. But no, inexperienced Jimbo goes straight for a rotary polisher with a wool pad and a heavy cut compound, going straight for it, which hopefully most of you just cringed when I talked about that. So again, whereas today I would start with the least abrasive method, obviously a DA and a light polish with a polishing pad. But back then I didn't know anything about soft paint, hard paint. I didn't know any of that. I didn't get into detailing with any formal training. It was all learn on the fly stuff. So I'm just going to town on this. I knew what, a rotary polisher could do, but still I was new. So, after, a minute or so of polishing on the paint, I get a funny smell, and I'm thinking to myself, that's weird. That smell isn't the compound. That smell isn't my machine burning, but it is a burning smell. What is that? So I stopped polishing, because I had the wherewithal to, realize stop polishing if, a circumstance changes in any way, only to take my pad off the car to realize that I've taken a nice size scratch and made it a burn in the paint mark much bigger than the scratch itself, and I didn't even get the scratch out. So insult to injury, didn't get the scratch out, didn't accomplish what the guy wanted me to do, and now we're really both freaking out. So I that time I didn't I hadn't called the guy right away, because like most of these situations, you're trying to figure out how you want it, what you're going to say to the customer as you tell them that you damaged their car. Again, you're not there to damage the car. You're obviously there to make the car look better. So what do you tell the customer? What do you do, right? So in this case, I was freaking out. This guy's an extremely high net worth individual, has a ton of cars. I'm freshly taking care of his cars, just, again, inexperienced as a detailer, all that. And I'm going to contrast all these stories of inexperience with one of experience with something that happens later. So, I just thought of another thing that I got blamed for that I actually didn't do. So, I call the guy, And by this time, his assistant had already called him to let him know what was going on. And the guy answers the phone and in a joking manner goes, "How much do I need to pay you to not touch my cars?" And I thought that was pretty cool, a really stressful situation. He's got a big event coming up, and he's making light of damage, and they were able to color correct it for the photos, and everything was fine. But that is the example of I was so embarrassed by that I really never even called that guy back. I never tried to reach out and do his cars ever again. I was just so embarrassed by that. Let's see. Another example. Here's an example of something that is a testament to why vehicle evaluation forms or vehicle assessment forms are so key. And I have a free exterior vehicle assessment form. If you just Google vehicle assessment form and the Auto Detailing Podcast, if you Google those together, that'll be the easiest way to shoot over to that form. You can print it out, obviously, just change your logo, but that's just a little free resource I have for everyone because I think these are so valuable. So I'd been doing this guy's truck. It was a Ford F-150. I had been doing it for a little while, a few times detailing it. The guy was, again, I'm a big vibe guy, so if I'm getting a weird vibe from someone, I write it out, but I'm extremely aware of that weird vibe that I'm getting from that person. And again, this guy, there were some situations in his life that had gotten him to the place he was at, injured, disability, on disability, out of work for an extreme amount of time, milking the system a little bit, et cetera, that were kind of just giving me weird vibes, along with many, many, many other things. He had a bunch of detailers within the past, wasn't happy with it, quote unquote, detailed his own cars for a long time, a bunch of red flags flaring up. But again, sometimes you do what you got to do. At the time, I didn't have any vehicle assessment forms. His truck was white, extremely well taken care of. Did it a few times, and then out of the blue, after a camping trip, randomly enough, he blames me for a bunch of dents on the top of his truck, saying they look like elbow marks, like someone would reach with their elbows across the hood of the truck. The only problem is these were all over the truck, all over the very top hood of the truck. They were, in the center, and there was no formal pattern like someone working around the truck. So, when you didn't do damage and a customer is blaming you for damage, I'm not convinced that a vehicle assessment form is going to hold up and be, the end-all be-all, but it would definitely be an asset to have to combat their claim, right? Because really what it comes down to is his word against mine. And if I didn't do it, I'm obviously going to be like, I didn't do it. He's going to be like, well, who did it then? You're the only one who's washed my car. And it's like, well, there's no way for me to even prove that either, right? That I was the only one to touch his car since the last time I was there. So that one, I had lined up a PDR guy to go look at it, and the customer ended up never responding to me. So that to me was a giant red flag of like, okay, it really wasn't me, right? Because I know I didn't do it. I wasn't going to pay for the repair either, because I don't think he should be a pushover the whole time, right? This isn't about just any customer being able to blame you for anything, and then you have to pay for it. It's about finding a resolution that both you and your customer are happy with. And really the only way to do that, if you've really caused the damage, is to own up and pay for it, no matter how much it's going to cost you. And hopefully you have an insurance plan in place. Garage keepers, some sort of liability insurance. If you're driving a car and someone happens to crash into you, you're probably going to be covered under your general, driving insurance, not necessarily business insurance, but you can never be too safe when it comes to stuff like this. So anyway, another example of a customer is I was doing fleet work at a office building. Hold on, let me grab a drink of coffee here. All right, so I was doing fleet work at an office park. In fact, it was the Carl's Jr. corporate offices here in Anaheim, California. Carl's Jr. or Hardee's. It was their world headquarters. and I was doing fleet work for employees' cars at a little bit of corporate work, but mainly fleet work. I was really trying to get in to do their like mobile coach or mobile trucks that are the grill and stuff, but never got to that point. So anyway, I was doing employees of the building's car as a, kind of a employee benefits package. And so I was doing that. I do a customer's car. There I had customers fill out the service they wanted, sign a consent form, a consent and release form, because Carl's Jr. Incorporated or Carl Catcher Enterprises didn't want to be responsible for any damage that I caused to their employees' cars, so they were releasing liability to me. And then I was not taking responsibility for any damage that would be done to the car, and the employee had to sign off on that as well. So even though I knew that if there was ever a claim, that I would be more than willing to take care of it if I caused the damage. And that's the running theme throughout this whole thing is if you're going to cause the damage, you got to own up and you got to take care of it. And in you owning up, that shows a lot of a character to the customer, and that usually diffuses the situation at hand. So that's the overarching theme. Take care of it, take care of your customer, and they're going to be fine, right? So if you take nothing else away, take that away. So with this situation, I do the customer's car, they sign the consent, sign off on the service, and then I was there once a week. They came back a week later and said, hey, you broke my vent on my car. You broke the air vent on the inside of the car. And I was like, first of all, there is a possibility, but there's really no possible way. I mean, I use, you know how it is, you're super gentle on interiors, especially older interiors. And in fact, I had making a note of the broken air vent because again, as I got more experienced, I started to look for things that were potential liabilities to me. So, or things that customers could blame me for. So I began to make notes of stuff, be extra clear with customers. Still need to do that episode on communication. So I was able to actually go back. I would store all these consent forms in alphabetical order in a binder and actually keep them with me. That way, if there was ever an issue or someone said, oh, you didn't do my car, or I paid you, but you're saying I didn't pay you, I had all that information stored. So I was able to go back on that customer's file and say, actually, and you have to do this in the right way too, because you can't be an ass going back and telling the customer that they're completely wrong and they're trying to screw you. That's not cool either. But, I was able to go back in the customer's file and say, well, actually, look, it was already broken. But even at that, for that particular situation, I knew that an air vent valve, or not even a valve, but the air vent on a Honda Pilot wasn't going to be that expensive. So even at that, to mitigate that situation even further, because customer service is key and customer communication is key. Two pillars that I've built my entire detailing business on. Yeah, knowing how to detail is great. Having experience is great. All that stuff is great, but communication and customer service are two pillars that you really need to focus on when growing your detailing business. And so I told that customer, hey, look, even though I'm not at fault, I'm not taking responsibility for that. And it's clear that and I know, whether that customer admits it or not, that I didn't do that. I didn't break that vent. However, in my head, I'm thinking to myself, how much could an air vent really be, right? It's probably on eBay for like 30 cents. Worst case scenario, he goes to the dealer. Maybe it's probably going to be under $100, right? So under $100 is not, in some people's world, it's really going to break the bank. And to be honest, I've been at times in my life where I couldn't afford to give a customer $100, right? And that's where you could trade for services as well. But I was figuring in this situation, it wouldn't kill me if I had to break out the $100 to keep this customer happy, right? So I actually told that customer, after providing all the evidence that I didn't do it, they knew I didn't do it, but I still told him, hey, if you really feel like I still did it, right, and I'm just trying to cover my tracks, if you research and let me know how much the air vent is, I'll buy it for you, or I'll split it with you, or you can, and you can make this stuff up as you go, guys. It's you encounter a situation and then you learn from it and you change it next time. So don't be afraid to kind of make it up on the fly as you go, with the basis of making everything a win-win situation. So everything I do is I always want it to be a win-win situation. I want it to be a win for me, where I want to get out of here unscathed, and I don't like the feeling, that feeling of having guilt on my side, or that almost like a cloud of guilt looming over you. Sorry, I took another sip of coffee. It really affects everything you do throughout not the rest of your life, but until you can get over that moment. Sometimes that can take a long time. So in this situation, it was like, you know what, I'd rather pay the money and then be done with it and not have to worry about it or think about it than have to worry and think about it. That's going to end up costing me more than $100. So anyway, those are just a few examples of issues that I've had when I've crashed customers' cars. Again, another one being insult to injury is my in-laws. Again, trying to do a favor by pulling the car back in the garage after I just detailed it, only to not pull it in enough. And I didn't double check because I was kind of in a rush, which usually that's when all this stuff always happens, is when you're panicked, in a rush, in a hurry. So my word of caution would be, as you are moving customers' cars, really pay attention, really focus, and that'll mitigate, accidents happening by tenfold. So just be careful that's, my overarching piece of advice. So that, and then, didn't pull in the mother-in-law's car far enough, and then insult to injury proceeded to, as the garage door stopped and popped back up because it obviously hit the bumper, I proceeded to hit the button a couple more times, and just to let that garage door rub on that back bumper a little bit. Again, in another situation, it's like, wow, sorry, I just ruined your pretty much brand new car. At least the bumper. Again, at least those sensors were broken. It was easy to be touched up and repainted. No big deal. But again, the walk of shame, especially for your mother-in-law when you're fairly newly married. Not a fun situation to be in. So hope you guys got a laugh or two out of my faults and mishaps. And hopefully, above all, you learned something from it and can kind of have a takeaway. I just wanted to share with you, some of my issues and mishaps and things that I've done along the way to really lose money, but keep customers at the same time. And that's it too, right? Like the guy crashed his Audi. I lost money on getting his car repaired. I lost money on work that day, but in the long run, I ended up recouping all that money by keeping him as a client because of how I handled the situation. And then also, you're not having to risk bad Yelp reviews or bad Google reviews or anything like that. And that's really one thing that we need to be aware of living in this day and age with businesses. Is that people can take to the internet and really say whatever they want. So just consider that when thinking about how you want to handle a situation. Just know that anyone can take to the internet and really say whatever they want. And then once they do that, that's a nightmare. So, and I've had those customers too, but we'll probably save that for a later date because I think I've actually already talked about that customer situation before. So again, hopefully you got a laugh. Hopefully that was exciting to you. I'm headed to SEMA in 2 days. I'll be there recording a ton of interviews, and those interviews are what we're going to hear from here on out with just insane detailers, companies, what's going on in the detailing industry and all that. So I'm really, really excited for these future episodes. Keep your ears peeled, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. If you're going to be at SEMA, again, hit me up. Let me know. Let's meet up for a selfie maybe. I know selfies aren't like the rage anymore, but I definitely like putting faces to names, and a lot of you guys reach out on Facebook and stuff like that. So I'd love to meet you guys. Again, I'll be there pretty much hanging out in the North Hall the whole time. So hope to see you, a lot of you there. Best way to reach me, Facebook Messenger. You could go to facebook.com/autodetailingpodcast and get me on there. See you guys.